We are Nerd Cult Online, and this is the Marvel Collection Pack 1 on Pinball Fx. Part 2. So the first table that we're doing in the second part is Wolverine. And out of all of the ones that were in this pack, this one probably was the one I played the absolute most out of all of them back on Pinball FX 2. And as you can see, you have Sabretooth, Silver Samurai, there's a Sentinel in the back right corner. It also shows Daken and X-23 and Wolverine on the table itself. Now, Wolverine has always been one of my absolute favorite Marvel characters. And so, you know, having a table completely dedicated to him definitely is an absolute win for me. And you know, going from that older table and my memories of it to this one, immediately right off the bat, you know, it definitely feels, you know, kind of like coming home, just because of how many hours I've logged on that table originally. But it was never one that I was able to actually complete all of the missions in. And so, you know, going back into it, you know, I definitely hope to be able to do that with this version of the table. I'm not aware of what the main challenge is for that item, but of course there's always the leveling up challenges. And so, like, to start the Sabretooth event, you do have to basically open up that section, get the ball in there, and then have it bounce around. I believe it's like 40 times, and hit those buttons in the back. And by it doing so, that will initiate that challenge. But for whatever reason, getting that thing open and getting the ball in there was always difficult for me. I don't know why. I just have this like mental block on hitting it. And I don't believe in all of the time I've invested on the table that I've ever initiated a Silver Samurai mission either. And you know, despite that being the case, this is still by far one of my favorite tables on the pack. You know, visually, it's absolutely gorgeous. It pulls from a lot of the main Wolverine characters that are not, you know, exclusive to things like when he was with the Avengers and things like that. And just overall, the table itself is just a hell of a lot of fun. And so grateful that it's included in this pack and that they were able to bring back all of the original Marvel tables as well. And I know that I'm going to be spending a lot of time on this table specifically.
That's it! Ball lost.
Running protocols. Destroy.
You are an unworthy opponent, Gaijin.
Running protocols. Searching for mutants.
The next table we're going to be looking at is Ghost Rider. Now, out of all of the tables, this is one that, you know, I've always thought looked awesome, you know, especially with, you know, how iconic Ghost Rider looks on the table as well. I have never been able to successfully complete any missions on the original table. Never really been able to actually initiate any either, at least not that I'm aware of. And being able to hit the specific ramps that are needed to do some of them is definitely very difficult for me for whatever reason. Visually, it's an absolutely stunning table. but just, trying to get those missions started, and especially being able to regularly hit that jump and get the ball actually to go over is one of the biggest difficulties that I faced on this table. Now, Ghost Rider is another one of those tables, like Doctor Strange in the previous video, that, I've really enjoyed the character for a long time, but never really got into most of the comics. Now, if I was going to be designing a Ghost Rider themed table, I definitely would have looked more towards the artwork style of Clayton Crane, who did really the only Ghost Rider stories that ever actually captured my attention, and gone that route. But again, Ghost Rider's always been one of those characters I've just really loved, but most writers have not been able to write a story compelling enough that it holds my attention for more than an arc. And going with this table, again, visually it's great, but I just tend to have a lot of problems hitting the things that I want to hit on this table more than probably any other table. And it definitely takes a lot from the gameplay experience when constantly just met with that frustration consistently. And so because of that, I'm going to say that this is my least favorite of the Marvel tables. Now, that being said, it's still a solid table, and it's definitely not a detriment to the pack. But just overall enjoyability, I think it was the worst of the tables. And considering how many winners there are in the pack, that's not necessarily a bad thing either. In mentally ranking them, one always has to be ranked lower than the others, of course.
Game over.
The next table in the pack is Thor. Now, Thor is another one of those characters that most of the comics rarely manage to capture my attention, but I've always thoroughly enjoyed the character and the original Norse mythology as well behind him. I remember when I first started reading the comics, I had already done some extensive study on my own into the actual real world mythology of Thor and the Norse gods, and seeing how faithful some of the stories were, I thought was a fantastic decision by the team at Marvel in the early days, and it makes for such a rich world. And so one thing I really like is that you have a lot of that mythology and the world brought into this table as well. I mean, we've got the ice area that the ice giants are from. I'm assuming the dragon thing, at first glance I thought it was Fin Fang Foom, but I think that maybe it's more the snake that basically is going to consume the world. It's basically coiled around it. I believe Jormungandr, something like that. But I'm not certain on the name. But tying in all of these things into mythology and bringing them here and including them on the table as well as in the lore, I think is a fantastic decision. Of the tables that are about characters that I like the characters but not so much the stories, this one's probably my favorite of those ones. Overall, it is a gorgeous table. I love, again, the different realms that are all tied into the table. My biggest problem with the table itself is just that I have a really hard time hitting the ball when it comes back from certain angles, and you just seem to sink that ball, get a ball out just like right there, more often than not. And so this is definitely a difficult table, but if you can get good on this table, which I do hope to eventually. It's going to be better for it because, again, this is an absolutely gorgeous table, and love just how chock full of lore it is, and Easter eggs and things like that. The next table in the pack is the X-Men table. Now, the art style is definitely very reminiscent of Jim Lee's art style when they rebooted the X-Men comics in the 90s. And that was the story arc that got me basically to become a diehard Marvel fan, and specifically the X-Men themselves, are by far my favorite Marvel team as well. Now, there are so many fantastic storylines. I would love to see them come back and make a new X-Men table, like maybe centered around Messiah Complex, which is actually my favorite X-Men storyline. But as far as this table goes, it's absolutely stunning. I love that, as you play, it incorporates a lot of the powers of the core X-Men that were around during that era. Again, the 90s version of X-Men, like what you see in the animated series, as well as that initial run with Jim Lee, and the fighting against Magneto and the Brotherhood is just absolutely great. And the table itself is just, again, absolutely stunning. A lot of fun to play on, especially with all the dialogue and Easter eggs hidden throughout. And for this table and the Wolverine table alone, this pack is worth the cost. And that's not even taking into account the fact that there's still 11 total tables in the entire thing. Again, absolutely love this table. It's so much fun, and I just wish that I was better at it. And but the more I play, the better I'm going to get at it. And so I definitely plan on spending a lot of time on this table. I need to actually figure out the main challenge as well, so that way I can just focus on score only from there, and see what else I trigger and unlock. And can't wait to spend more time on this table because, again, it is by far one of the best in the pack, if not the best. And all of the X-Men callouts are just so fantastically done, and sincerely hope that we do eventually get to see more from Marvel and the X-Men with Zen Studios.
The battle is over before it's truly begun.
By the goddess, we have failed!
And for the final table in the Marvel Collection 1 pack is Moon Knight. Now, for those that aren't familiar with Moon Knight or the recent series on Disney Plus, he basically was formerly a mercenary who found himself in a forgotten temple of Khonshu, and basically gave himself over to the god at the price of basically being the avatar of vengeance for that god. While Moon Knight goes around to protect the citizens of the night, basically travelers and women and things like that, he usually sticks to the alleys, and he does fly a crescent moon-shaped flying vehicle. I don't remember what it's called. Basically he's very much like the Marvel version of Batman, and except for this one is specifically ordained by a god to do so, where Batman just has money. And so he basically goes and beats up your everyday thugs, he does have a couple recurring villains, like I believe Bushmaster, or it's Bushwhacker, something like that, who he actually ended up like cutting the face off of as a warning to other villains, and then basically, after he died, ended up haunting Moon Knight for a while. And typically what I've noticed with the Moon Knight comics is they tend to start out with a really great storyline, and then start getting into the crazy storylines where it kind of goes off the rails and doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And that's pretty consistent. But one thing that they've always focused on, though, is his multiple personality disorder, and the fact that he kind of forgets that he has that, depending on which personality is in charge, and basically wears each of the personalities almost like it's not just a new person controlling his body, but like it's literally a new version of him every single time. And it can be quite confusing for the people that call themselves friends, and very difficult with helping him out there. Now, the table itself does have multiple missions with multiple enemies that you fight. That table in the corner rotates to actually show different scenes while you're triggering them and fighting them. And what's funny is, when recording this, that hit on that night there, I can't remember what his name is, when that happened, it's the first time I've ever successfully landed a hit on him on this table. And this is another one that was also on Pinball Fx 2, and it was a lot of fun. Overall, loved the